Mr. Rush, I'm going to ask you a series of questions based on your training as a microanalyst and your experience as a lab technician with the police crime lab concerning these various items of evidence that were turned over to you for examination and analysis.
Yes, sir.
First, the specimens taken from Caroline Spencer. Do you have an opinion based on your training and experience and to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty as to what was present on those smears?
Yes. I found male spermatozoa.
Were you able to determine the blood type of the person from whom the spermatozoa came?
As I said earlier, he's one of those persons we call a secretor. Because of this, I was able to determine that his blood type was the same as the defendant's.
What about the scrapings taken from Caroline Spencer's fingernails?
Same blood type.
And the hair sample found in the shower drain?
One strand of the hair was similar to that of the defendant's.
Is that the best you can do, similar?
Yes, sir.
What about the button and the dress that you examined?
Oh, there's no question that the button came from the dress. Visual examination shows that it is identical with other buttons from the dress. And the holes in the button where it was sewn to the dress match similar holes in the dress. Microscopic examination shows that the thread is identical with other threads used to sew all the buttons on the dress.
Do you have an opinion, based on the factors that I mentioned earlier, as to how this button came off the dress?
Oh, that's a little more difficult. We examined the dress and the thread on the button under a high-powered microscope. The dress fabric showed areas around the hole made by the thread that were pulled outward. The end of the thread itself was frayed. Based on this evidence, I concluded that the button had been torn off.
You may cross-examine, counsel.
Violently or in the heat of passion?
I beg your pardon?
Was the button torn from the dress violently, or did it come off the dress, as so many buttons do, as a result of the way the person who was wearing the dress took the dress off?
You know I can't determine that, Miss West.
So then the best you can say is that the button came off because it was pulled off, right?
That is my opinion.
And you have no way of knowing who did the pulling, why, or with what motivation, do you?
Absolutely not.
So the button could just as easily have been pulled off by Caroline Spencer in a rush to get out of the dress. Isn't that right?
That is true. Yes.
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Morning. I'm late.
Ah, so's your brother.
When did he get in?
Long before you did.
Well, I don't doubt that.
Mm-hmm. Where did you go?
Ask me where I didn't go.
So you've been hitting those bars.
Haven't done that in a hell of a long while.
I thought you'd matured way past that point.
Well, you were wrong, Mother.
Women?
Just booze.
Did it help?
No.
Want to tell me what happened?
No.
I'll tell you. You went to the Logan home. You were looking for Caroline. When you got there, they told you that she was gone. They told you your brother had taken her away someplace.
How the devil did you know that?
2 and 2, I put them together.
Oh, that's simple.
Caroline and Thorne came here. Caroline wanted to come. Presumably to see me.
Presumably.
Well, it crossed my mind, Ridge, that she really came to see you.
The bold and the beautiful. This portion sponsored by Renews It Roommate, the long-lasting air freshener.
You felt that Caroline wanted to see me?
It crossed my mind. Why else do you think she would come here after a grueling day at that trial?
Because Caroline is damn fond of you, Mother. She didn't want to see me. Take my word for it.
Your logic doesn't hold water.
Why?
Because it was inevitable that she'd have the chance of seeing you. And she knew that.
What point are you trying to make, Mother?
Honey, you're usually brighter than this. Don't you get the idea?
You think that...
Really think what?
Good morning, darling.
Morning, Ridge.
Thorne?
You were out late last night? Long hours at the office?
No other reason.
Well, you missed seeing Caroline. I'm sure Mother must have told you about her wanting to stop in.
Yeah, she said something about it.
She's had a rough time at the trial. Apparently, it's not going very well.
I understand that the rapist has a formidable woman attorney that's defending him.
Kind of boggles the mind, doesn't it? That some trash like that rapist could get a woman lawyer to buy into his cheap story.
Well, I think it just proves that he's very glib and very convincing. I mean, otherwise, Caroline wouldn't have given him the time of day, much less let him walk her right into her apartment.
Oh, God, what it would do to her if this jerk beat this thing and gets off.
Well, there is a possibility. I mean, that sort of thing has happened.
So when is this Ron Deacon going to take the stand?
Today. But before he does, there's one more witness the prosecutor wants to call for Caroline. Her testimony's damned important to this case.
Her?
Brooke Logan. He's counting heavily on her testimony.
Calling your attention to the early evening hours of August 10th, did you have occasion to receive a telephone call?
I did.
Did you recognize the voice on the other end of the phone?
Barely. It was so weak at first, I thought we had a bad connection.
Who was calling?
Caroline.
Did you have a conversation with her?
I wouldn't call it a conversation. Caroline was having extreme difficulty speaking.
Judge, this testimony is being offered to show what Miss Spencer said to Miss Logan, and also to show, by the manner and tone of her voice, her physical and emotional condition at the time. It is not being offered for the truth, as Miss Spencer asserted.
That eliminates any hearsay objection. Do you have any other objections, Ms. West?
I don't know how counsel can offer sworn testimony for anything other than the truth, but why don't I register my objection on material grounds to preserve my record and let Your Honor make the ruling?
That's fine. The objection is overruled. You may proceed, Mr. Teller.
Miss Logan, tell us what was said.
Caroline was pleading for me to come over to her apartment. She kept saying, "Come, please come," over and over again, like she was in shock.
Did she tell you why she wanted you to come to the apartment?
She just told me that she needed me. I told her I'd be right over.
What, if anything, did you do?
I made my excuses to my family, and I went right over to see Caroline.
What happened when you got there?
I went up to the door, knocked on the door, and stood there for a moment. And then I heard Caroline inside asking who it was.
Do you remember the tone of her voice?
Yes.
Describe it, please.
Terrified and hesitant at the same time. The kind of voice that when you hear it, you know immediately that something's wrong. Terribly wrong.
Miss Logan, after Caroline asked who was at the door, what happened?
I told her it was me. And after a moment, she opened the door and let me inside. That was the first time I saw her.
Describe her, please.
I don't have the words. She was clean, but she was a mess. She was there, but something about her said that she wasn't. She had this look in her eyes like she'd been beaten. Not literally, but emotionally. She looked defeated, and then she started to cry.
What did you do or say?
I grabbed her, and we hugged each other.
Tell the court what happened next.
While we were hugging, Caroline broke away from me and went to the door. The door was still open. She slammed it shut, and then she locked it.
What was her demeanor at the time?
Frantic, terrified. As though at any moment she expected to see someone she didn't want to walk through that door.
Objection to the last part, Your Honor. Counsel should know better. That is a totally inadmissible conclusion by the witness.
Sustained. The part about Miss Spencer not wanting to see someone can go out.
And the earlier part?
The part about Miss Spencer, frantic, terrified, that will stand.
Miss Logan, after Caroline slammed the door and bolted it shut, what happened?
She grabbed me, and she hung on hard, really hard.
Was she crying?
She cried throughout the evening.
Did she say anything as she cried?
After I sat her down on the couch and tried to calm her, she started telling me about this man she met at the restaurant and how nice he seemed. And how he talked her into letting him walk her home and then forced his way into the apartment and raped her.
What did you do next?
I prevailed on Caroline to let me call my friend, Detective Reed.
And after that?
We waited for Dave, Detective Reed.
What did you do while you waited?
I took care of her, as anyone would take care of a wounded child.
I really don't have anything more, Your Honor. You may cross-examine.
So it appears as though the trial's going to end today.
It looks that way, yes.
Good. Then Caroline can get on with her life. And maybe she can put all of this behind her, God willing.
Mother, when you talked to her, did she say anything about her plans for after the trial?
No, she didn't. I think it'd be a wonderful idea if she'd go away someplace and try and put it all into its proper perspective. On the other hand, she might just want to go back to the advertising agency and bury herself in her work.
Well, that'd be my guess.
She has another option.
Another option.
Last night I told Caroline that I'm going to ask her to marry me after the trial is over.
Talk about dropping a bomb.
I'm gonna go, Mother.
Wait, where are you going?
To the office, I imagine.
I don't want you to overreact to what he's just said.
Mother, I can't the hell pretend I didn't hear him.
It doesn't mean that it's over between you and Caroline.
He's going to ask her to marry him.
But that doesn't mean that she'll accept. Now, if she lost this case, and God forbid that that would happen, the Caroline that I know is not going to rush into a marriage with anyone.
Miss Logan, I take it you and Miss Spencer are best friends.
Yes.
Of long duration?
No, as a matter of fact, we met this past spring.
Since her wedding was called off.
We met after the wedding was called off.
She was pretty distressed by that incident, was she not?
As distressed as anyone would be, I suppose.
In fact, as I recall, she was hospitalized as a result. Isn't that right?
She was hospitalized. Whether it was a result of the wedding being called off or not, you would have to ask her.
Do you know of any other reason why she might have been hospitalized?
Not specifically.
In the weeks that followed her hospitalization, was Caroline Spencer content that her wedding had been called off?
I don't understand the use of the word content.
Was she pleased?
Of course not.
Was she happy with the situation?
I said no, she was not happy with the situation.
In fact, she was depressed by it. Isn't that right?
I wouldn't go so far as to say she was depressed by it.
The relationship between Caroline Spencer and Ridge Forrester had disintegrated during the time between the weddings being called off and the alleged rape, had it not?
I'm not the proper judge of that.
Was Caroline Spencer in love with Ridge Forrester?
Objection. Your Honor, there is no relevancy or materiality to this line of questioning.
There is relevancy in this area, Your Honor. I'll connect it up before the end of this case.
Can you do so now?
If I have to disclose the particulars of our case now, the prosecution will get an unfair advantage. Since this is a bench trial, can't Your Honor accept my assurance and strike the evidence if I don't follow through?
That seems reasonable to me. I'll take Mr. Talon's objection under advisement. You may proceed.
Tell us, as her best friend, was Caroline Spencer in love with Ridge Forrester?
I believe she thought she was.
Certainly enough in love that any breach in that relationship would cause her to be uncomfortable, shall we say?
I suppose you could say that.
And immediately before the supposed rape, was Caroline Spencer comfortable in her relationship with Ridge Forrester?
No, but...
Just a simple yes or no will do, Miss Logan. If your lawyer wants to bring out more information, he'll have the opportunity to do so. Now, I just have a few more questions to ask you. When Caroline Spencer called you that night, did she tell you why she wanted you to come to her apartment?
No.
Did you ask her why?
When your friends cry out for help, like Caroline did to me that night, you don't ask them why they need it. You just give it, if you can.
You said earlier that you prevailed upon Miss Spencer to let you call your policeman friend. Did you mean by your choice of that expression that Miss Spencer didn't want you to call the police?
She resisted my calling or telling anyone.
In the official report that Detective David Reed made about this incident, he says that you told him that Caroline Spencer was ashamed to have anybody know what had happened. Is this an accurate report that your friend filed?
Yes.
Caroline was ashamed to let you tell anyone that someone else had committed a violent crime against her?
That's the way she was.
What was she ashamed about?
The invasion of her person.
She was ashamed to complain because someone had invaded her person?
Yes.
Or was she ashamed because she had gotten herself intimately involved with a man who until that night was a stranger, and she didn't know how to handle that situation except by crying rape?
Objection!
Withdraw it, Your Honor. That's all.
Do you have anything more, Mr. Talon?
No, Your Honor. We rest.
You may step down, Miss Logan. Call your first witness, Ms. West.
I call the defendant, Mr. Ronald Deacon.
Join us again for The Bold and the Beautiful.